This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of bringing the CEO of David Energy, James McGinnis. He's coming out of close by in Brooklyn. We are going to talk about energy savings. We are going to talk a little bit about some technical components, but we're really going to talk about why you need to prioritize this as part of your 2024 action plan to maximize your profits and actually save the environment probably a little bit at the same time. So James, welcome to your first Halo Talks.
Pete, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So Integrity Square / Halo Talks has a partnership with your team, looking to try and bring on as many operators as we can onto your platform and onto this optimization plan. So give us a little background on yourself. So you've got some technical skills from University of Texas, Austin, and Georgetown. So talk about yourself, how you got into this, how you became an expert, and how this turned into a company.
Yeah, happy to. So yeah, just briefly, David Energy is a technology-enabled electricity provider, and we're focused on sort of solving all things energy for mostly, multi-location businesses, quick serve restaurants, and fitness brands, but big emphasis on fitness. As far as my journey, you're right. I did a master's in mechanical engineering at UT, and actually, when I was moving down there, of all places in Texas, there was this huge solar and wind boom going on, which I thought was very interesting. I read an article of a Texan saying, he didn't care about the environment, but he was making a lot of money building solar. So I felt like the industry was at a real inflection point. And I think that's embedded in a lot of the things that David Energy does, is that things like clean energy, sustainable solutions, rooftop solar, electric vehicles, battery storage, smart thermostats, these are all coming to the market and coming to, in particular, these small businesses. They are sustainable, but they also are just going to help save money and help maybe reduce headaches that you may have otherwise. But that was my sort of first initial entrance into the energy sector. And then through my master's was studying kind of all things and knew what's coming to the electricity grid and working in like local solar design and engineering work, actually going on site and installing.
Got it. So you guys have a keen focus on health club operators, groups that are consuming obviously a lot of electricity, whether it's for air conditioning purposes or for powering all the equipment inside the clubs. A lot of these clubs are open 24 hours. So they do have a pretty big, bill at the end of each month. Utilities is a meaningful, component of their, expenses. What are you guys actually doing to come in? I'm not changing providers necessarily. So tell us how it works and how easy it is to greenlight.
Yeah, so we do like to try and make things as easy and frictionless as possible. We know club operators have a ton of things going on, and energy is a very small piece of their P&L. That said, it can all of a sudden become a bigger one, and they don't quite know what to do about it. So we try and be very proactive in getting ahead of that. But more specifically, you pointed it out, I think 40 to 60% of business electricity consumption is just HVAC. There's very simple things that can be done in order to save money on energy, as well as avoid headaches that can come from energy bills. One would just be most of these club operators don't even have smart thermostats set up. So there's no ability to set a schedule. And we see things like the AC is set to 65 degrees all night long. And that could be going on for weeks. So getting thermostats installed, setting up standard operating procedures, and then most importantly, actually enforcing those standard operating procedures. I think one thing club operators also know is that their employees are going to mess with the thermostats, and they're not on site if they own a few of them. And so they're not going to know that, again, for maybe a couple weeks. Separate from, so we actually, monitor that and override those set point changes and make sure that operators are, that HVAC is running efficiently. There's a lot more behind that, like flagging potential issues with the HVAC systems, saving sort of expensive and frustrating technician visits on site, like for the HVAC systems. And then also just like unpacking and bills. So we monitor and audit bills constantly for operators, just everyone that comes through. Very surprisingly, the utility may make errors on the bill. They could be in the wrong rate class. They could misbill them for the wrong amount of volume. They could actually, there's something called slamming, where providers just fraudulently sign up locations to their electricity supply rate without the owner knowing, because they've done it with like the GM on site or something. So bills can be, they could be paying twice as much as they should be, and have a bunch of sort of anecdotes that I could speak to on that front. So those are like two big, just like low hanging fruits, like just by getting in and monitoring and automatically changing some things around how HVAC's being run or how bills are being paid. There's a lot of sort of alleviating of that stress and sort of cost that can come from that.
So I signed up with David Energy. Let's say I own 10 Crunch Fitness locations. Are you guys physically coming in and putting any kind of sensors? Are you putting in thermostats? Are you basically getting access to that? And then you've got a centralized, monitoring platform that's not just, software doing its work, but actually, a human element of monitoring that, as well as remotely changing that as needed.
Yeah, so on the HVAC side of things, we do have a team that will install smart thermostats. Unlike competitors, we like using just off the shelf hardware like Honeywell or Ecobee. They have all these modern APIs and stuff now. And if a customer already has brands that we support, like Honeywell, we can just get their credentials and sit on top. So there's no like cost to install or anything. But we do have the team to do it seamlessly if they do need smart thermostats. I love that you pointed out the like human versus software element here. So we do monitor through the software on an ongoing basis. Customers can set what we call auto release, where if there's an issue with the thermostat, we automatically fix it. Every week or two, we'll send an email of all the issues that we fixed. So even if we're automating things, they're going to know what's happening, and we're not just like they're still in the driver's seat. But or they don't have to do that. But 80% of our customers currently elect to enroll in that automated version of it. Otherwise, they can just go on the platform themselves, and we'll flag the issue, and then they have to fix it.
From a standpoint of business models that I've seen deployed in the space, whether it's somebody taking over my purchasing and then they're going to take a percentage of the savings of that, or any kind of vendor related, co-op marketing, whatever it is, there seems to be like, hey, I'll split what I save with you. I feel like sometimes there's like a law of diminishing returns on that. Like, okay, you saved me this year, but I don't think you can save it for me next year. You're putting a little too much of a pressure on me as your savior or your, optimizer, when I can't optimize, down to zero. So how do you guys think about it, as well as, the magnitude of the savings, as well as potentially the longevity of a HVAC system? That's one of the bigger hits that we see as an advisor on mergers and acquisitions. That's typically a big item that is either deferred capex that gets, potentially an escrow account attached to it, or
Right.
that is evaluated, the day before the deal closes, and could be a big, deduction or a flag for a buyer. So these HVAC systems, sometimes I'm told to go in and pretend I'm the HVAC guy, and I'm supposed to look up, all the time instead of being a banker.
Yeah.
But these are big deals for a buyer, because they know that the cost of replacement is at least six figures, and the maintenance reports sometimes are all over the place. So how do you think about what you're saving, and how does your business model work?
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen those sort of shared savings models. We think they're very challenging. Like, you never can really trust the baseline that's being set. Like, how do you know if the company's really driving the savings, or maybe you just stopped using as much energy this year or
Right, right.
something? So yeah, but the best part about our platform is that if the customer is buying energy through us as the supplier, the platform is free. So there's no savings component to it, because they're choosing to buy their energy through us. So I think it's worth touching on what an electricity supplier really is. If you're in 20, 25 states around the country, what you know as the utility, like for example, Con Edison in New York owns the poles and wires. They ship all the power. You can be a third party that actually sells or ships the power on those wires. Con Ed does not have like a team of traders or risk managers sitting there thinking about what is the best plan for you. They're just passing through the cost from the market. And so you're exposed. If the market goes up, you're going to pay more. If it goes down, maybe you get lucky and pay less. But so these third parties exist to like structure these plans for businesses and consumers. So we are an electricity supplier. We do that. And like I mentioned, through that bill auditing and monitoring tool, what we typically find is that whether it's on the utility or through some other third party, these rates are higher than they need to be. So I'll say to the customer, hey, you've been paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour on average for the last 12 months. Right now, we can get you a rate for 11 cents. Does that sound better? Here's why it makes sense. And we typically can find better rates for customers because all we do is think all day about how to get better rates for this type of customer. And so, most of our customers end up buying energy through us. And that's like our main business model actually is on the energy side.
Maybe a rudimentary question, but if Con Edison is going into a health club in New York City, they basically own that, that pipe or cord, right? Or cable, whatever you want to refer to it as. Are there other providers that are actually could ride on that same electrical grid that you're pricing against it? Or how does it work? I know regulation, deregulation, competition. I know there's some cellular companies that could use other people's cell, infrastructure. So just give us like a quick primer on that, because if I'm switching my electricity to you, I feel like, what's the risk of that? And is there any risk,
Right.
or is it basically the same? And you're just powering juice for less money.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the risk is more on the cost you're paying. Like, there's definitely sort of providers out there who will charge more than they should. But there's no like, my lights are going to turn off, for example. Um, at the end of the day, the utility is like the provider of last resort. So by default, people are on the utility, but more and more they're choosing to switch over to third parties as they learn what they are. So yeah, there's no like interruption of power or anything like that. It's mostly just saying, hey, David Energy or whoever it is controls this account now. We let the power market know that, and then we're responsible for sort of serving that meter financially, based on the prices in the market.
Gotcha.
So at the end of the day, like the way I think about what these suppliers are is they're essentially insurance companies. Power is the most volatile commodity in the world. You saw in COVID, it actually doubled in like a 6-month basis coming out of COVID. Day to day, prices can fluctuate like 300x in the spot market for power. And so all that is just when you're on with Con Ed or your local utility, it's basically passed on through. You're exposed to that. And so these third parties like us usually offer a fixed price. So we'll say, hey, the next 2 years, you're going to pay one rate for energy. You don't have to think about it anymore. We find club operators often like that they can like financially plan for this now in their budget because they know it's much more certain what those costs are going to be. That's why we think of it as an insurance product. You're basically being protected from any like huge spikes that can happen in the market. And that's why these companies exist.
Gotcha. So from a standpoint of, without naming names of specific clients, but what is the magnitude of the potential savings here?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely varies based on size of the location, where they are. I think maybe a good, there's a case study on our website, so I'm happy to talk about it. We had a 2-location Crunch franchise Crunch Fitness franchise owner. I think in our first year with them, we saved them $11,000 just across those 2 clubs. So it's not going to be like the hugest thing on your P&L, but that's basically free money. And I think what's interesting though, if you do check out that case study, the thing the owner spoke most about is sort of the peace of mind that he has working with us, because he knows that we're looking at this stuff all day long, every day. and you're getting the best deal possible based on one, how you use energy. So you're going to like use as little energy as possible through HVAC monitoring and all that stuff. And also then how you're going out and buying energy. You're not getting like scammy rates or anything like that. Then we work with Crunch Corporate itself and Equinox. We just did a big expansion with. So, a bunch of Club Pilates franchisees now. So everything from like the 2-location gym owner all the way up to Equinox Corporate, we've been able to find savings opportunities that range from a couple hundred dollars to $10,000 per location, depending on the size of those gyms.
Gotcha. And what's the obviously we're working together, and we're going to promote this to all of our clients. In addition, when we're selling a club and you get $11,000 worth of savings, to us, if that's a 5, 6, 7, 8 times multiple, it's not just 11,000; it's the multiple of what you sell your business at on an enterprise value. So it is even more material than you're talking about. From a standpoint of your focus on the health club industry, is there certain learnings that you had? You could obviously go into, big manufacturing facilities and industrial plants and maybe where there's more square footage. But if you guys, is it like a personal passion as well as, hey, like you guys haven't looked at this, or you don't have time to look at it based on the fragmentation or maybe, the expertise of the industry. Obviously there are certain technologies that take a long time to proliferate. And I feel like you guys have made really good traction here.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just that you guys are a bunch of cool guys from Brooklyn and you're like, hey, I want to talk to you and I want to hang out with you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I'll start with the high level and then get to the learnings, which have been really fascinating. So, where my passion originally comes from is I believe these technologies like solar, wind, battery storage, electric vehicles, even API enabled backup generators and smart thermostats and refrigeration controls, like all these smart devices coming to homes and businesses are going to radically transform not just the power grid, but how we use energy day to day. Like if everyone's just switches their heating and their driving over to electric power, which through heat pumps and electric vehicles we're seeing, we're going to double the amount of electricity we consume compared to energy. So we're like shifting away from burning things to using power to drive things. That whole problem fascinates me. And I'm very passionate about bringing these new technologies to segments that haven't had access to them before. So like the big commercial and industrial manufacturing facilities, they've known about this stuff for a while. They've probably implemented it. There's like big teams of consultants that they work with and do that. But no one's really paid attention necessarily to the 2-location crunch owner out there. And we think that these people have a right to access to these technologies as well. And so I think that being said, the most interesting learning that I've had through this is that owners and club operators shouldn't be as passionate as us about electricity. They shouldn't think about this. They have a million things on their plate. Sure. Power is usually like number 59, and it should be because it's so low on their P&L. But there's a lot of really simple things that you can do that's actually quite complicated to figure out, but simple to do at the end of the day that can go a long way. Like to your point, driving higher exit values and stuff for clubs. And so we love doing that heavy lifting for this segment. It's a segment that's been left behind. They have not been exposed to this. And we bring all that sophistication and knowledge of this industry. We make it very simple and easy because we empathize with the fact at the end of the day, club operators should not be thinking about electricity tariffs or what solar or electric vehicle chargers are going to do for them. We're happy to do that work for them.
And look, I would tell you, maybe this is a novice response, but I didn't really know that you really had options, to switch. Yeah. I know that you have that on the phone side, obviously, and you have it on the cellular side, but I don't know what the intricacies of energy being pushed through the grid that you could actually buy your own power. I mean, I obviously watched that Enron documentary, and figured out that these guys were, manipulating stuff and smartest guy in the room.
The industry's come a long way since those days.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to be working together. We're going to get this message out there from a standpoint of how long it takes to get in touch with you guys to actually get your bill changed over? Is there a notice that goes out to the current provider? Is this a 2 week, 4 week, 4 hour? Tell us how long it gets to get onboarded, and then if you got a list of referrals, obviously you've got some names on your site with Barry's and New York Sports Clubs and Crunch that have validated this.
Right. So, well, just on the options front first, just because you mentioned that,
Yeah.
Like most operators that we talk to say this is a fixed cost. That's what everyone thinks.
Right.
That they can't really do anything about it. They get their bill and they pay it, and that's it. And we don't like to think about it at fixed cost. There's certainly things you can do to drive those costs down. And so that's the type of stuff that we've gotten a lot more passionate about, like educating the industry that there are all these options. But as far as like the implementation side of things, we've seen everything from a few hours to a few months or weeks, depending on like how the existing setup and how much time or how on it customers are like. But the way it basically works is on the utility bill front. That's pretty seamless. Like once we get the account numbers and sign a contract, it's out of sight, out of mind for the customer. They don't need to do anything else. They can set a start date 6 months in advance or 2 weeks in advance. And based on that start date, one day it'll just switch over and then they start getting billed by us. And that's it. On the sort of thermostat side of things, if there's already thermostats installed, we get their credentials and we can have those on the platform in a couple hours, and then obviously schedule a turnover call and everything like that. On the installation front, depending on, hey, we don't want you coming in on the weekdays, you got to come in on the weekend, we got to schedule around business operating hours, whatever it may be. That can take longer, but our team on site is like a few hours in and out to actually do the install, and there's no like interruption in service or anything like that. So yeah, I would say it can take anywhere from a few hours to a few weeks, but we usually target to be fully live within like 45 days.
Awesome.
And number of locations matters as well too. If we're doing 40 locations versus 2, that's going to be a longer rollout process.
2 closing questions. One is the origination of the David Energy name. And then if you got a good quote or, being an entrepreneur or something that, keeps you going and motivates you, or like is like a, Jamesism.
Yeah. So sorry, the first one was,
Where'd the name come from? David Energy.
Oh, the name come from. Yeah. So, that's something just on your options point, right? Now customers, homes and businesses can put solar panels on the roof or a battery or a generator. They can generate and store power on site. This is like radically new. Normally we'd go build a big coal or nuclear plant, ship it down to the customer. You get your meter plugged in, you get your bill once a month. There's nothing you can do. You have no control over that.
Right.
And these utilities are literally monopolies, or they have been. Their monopoly power has been lessening over time. But we think of these big power companies as like the Goliaths out there, and then the customers we're serving are the Davids of the world. So
nice.
David Energy, we really want to be a platform to get these options in the hands of the individual, and so that they can kind of take their power back, no pun intended.
Love it.
From the big companies.
And then you got any quotes that you live by, or like, hey, James says this all the time?
Oh man, I don't know that. I don't think people hear me say this all the time. Those would probably be different. But the first thing I thought of, it's probably driven me the last like 4 or 5 years. For the other entrepreneurs out there, they may resonate with this one. It was a quote by General Ferdinand Foch, who led the Allied forces in World War I. I know it's a little
no, bring it. I love it.
To use war metaphors, but he was known as a very sort of daring and aggressive commander that in times got him into trouble. But it was like he led this brilliant counteroffensive that ended the war, basically, because he decided to attack when everyone said defend. But his quote was, let me get this right. My center is giving way. My right is in retreat. Situation excellent. I'm attacking. So he was like, if as long as you're on the offensive, you're you're in the right position, and I think that's very right for startups. Because there's a million things going wrong all the time, but you got to just keep moving forward. So as long as you're on the offensive, the situation is excellent, even if everything is sort of in shambles.
Let's go. David Energy versus Goliath. My friend, welcome officially to the Halo sector, and we will help proliferate this on all fronts.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.